can't believe it. Stupid fucking pricks. They're gonna do it. I knew they'd do it. Just because I knew how stupid they were. In my head, I was thinking, no, they won't do it. They won't sack Maguire. But sure enough, news is out there. West Tigers look like they're going to sack Maguire at the end of the week. I can't fucking believe it. He's
the one thing they need is a new coach. That'll fix everything.
Fucking Potato, Chairman Lee, these fucking wankers.
I know, right? You know, if I was a West Tigers fan, I would email the club and tell them that they need to get rid of the CEO and the entire board.
I can tell you right now, I posted some stuff on Twitter today.
Yes.
Some stats, actually. Some facts. Fucking facts.
Can you run through them? Because I saw some of these facts.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, Justin Pascoe. I don't know if many people know about his background. But he was in marketing or some bullshit at Penrith for a while there. And then in August 2014, he became the head of Rugby League at the Panthers. Now, I'm sure that you know that in 2014, Penrith finished, third or fourth?
We were terrible.
2014?
We were terrible for 10 years.
Yeah, no, but
I can't remember where we were in 2014.
Pretty certain 2014 you finished fourth.
Okay.
And then the very next year, a whole year of Pascoe, you were one win away from getting the wooden spoon.
Oh, really?
That's his precedent. That's what he said. You finally got up to the top of the tree. You're going, right, we're back in the fucking finals. Let's go. And Pascoe goes, fuck yous. Down to the bottom of the ladder you go. And the Tigers saw that and went, let's fucking hire him. We like the way this guy operates.
Let's get this guy running the whole shebang.
Everything. Let's give him the fucking keys to everything. So from September 2015 till now, he's been at the club. The Tigers have won something like 54 or 56 of 140 games with him at the helm.
Wow.
They finished 9th, 14th, 9th, 11th, 13th.
Far
he
out.
has not yet seen one full season of getting a team that he's in control of into the finals. Not once.
Now,
he hasn't even got close. He hasn't jagged it. Those nights that the Tigers had, they were distant nights.
Yeah, they were coming home with a wet sail 9th.
Yeah, and there was quite a bit of daylight between 9th and 8th there.
Yeah, but to be fair, he is running a club that is in a salary cap controlled competition, and that is one of the closest competitions in the world up until the last 18 months. And there is a lot of turnover of teams that make the finals. So, of course, the West Tigers are not going to be involved in any of that, in any sort of shred of success.
Let's have a look at another fact then, shall we? In the last decade, every single team has made the finals once, except for one team.
Can I guess who it is?
Have a guess.
Is it the Western Suburbs Tigers?
That's the one.
How about that?
Fuck me. And now they're going to get rid of him. And as I said in the last episode, I don't care if you want to get rid of Justin, if you want to get rid of Michael Maguire. If the club decides after it's done a proper review by competent humans, not a bunch of pot plants who think they know what they're doing, then fine. But let a competent new board pick the new coach, not these fucking idiots who keeps hiring coaches that they end up sacking, which is just them admitting that they made the wrong decision. So why do we keep getting these people who admit that they keep making the wrong decision to keep making more wrong decisions? How is that building success?
It's a very good question. I would also say that the West Tigers are one of the few NRL clubs where members of the club can't actually vote on the board's makeup. Would that be correct?
I believe that's the case, yes.
I think that's very telling.
Yeah. How's this for you? The off-season last year. We're not even talking 12 months ago. It's about 9, maybe 10 months ago. This club, these people, Chairman Lee and the Spud, they gave Michael Maguire a 2-year contract extension. And they said, The extension of Michael's contract affirms our faith in him as the coach that West Tigers needs to continue to move forward. So now they're admitting that they're liars or that they were wrong. In both cases, they're not competent to do this job.
Yeah. Well, look, at some point, if you look through how much money they've had to just pay out coaches that they have hired and then fired and let go, and just look at the money that they've spent in paying those coaches out.
Yeah.
That in itself alone is enough for dismissal, in my opinion.
And if they hadn't actually given him a contract extension, he'd be off contract now, which means if they decide to go with another coach, it wouldn't cost them anything. Now they've got to pay out an extra 2 years worth of contract. Fucking genius.
Yeah. And look, like we've both said, neither of us believe that we both think that Maguire should be there long term. He isn't the problem. Like, he is the last in the line of the problems at the West Tigers. And it's unfortunate that he has had to go through this entire mess. And I think if you look at that Tiger Town documentary, it really shows that this is a guy that is working his ass off to try and get this club going in the right direction. And he's surrounded by incompetent people.
It's exactly right. Absolutely nailed it. Look, if you create a culture that protects underperforming players and constantly throws coaches under the bus at the first opportunity, you will struggle to sign elite players, which is the case, and eventually you will find it harder and harder to find a coach. And that's the case here, because the Tigers are now looking to the UK for a coach. The only one in Australia they can get, is apparently that they're chasing, is Cameron Ciraldo. He's a brilliant assistant coach over at Penrith. And I wouldn't be surprised if Ciraldo looks at the Tigers and says, fuck that, not touching that. And so the other two coaches that they're looking at are, British coaches anyway. Steve McNamara.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow. He's the best of the two British options.
Wow.
The other one is Sean Wayne.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's a disaster. I hadn't heard that.
There's a fourth option.
Yeah.
And that's Christian Wolf. And Christian Wolf is a good coach, but he's not going to come over to the West Tigers. And there's a reason why any coach, even a half-decent one, will not come to the West Tigers, and that's because the West Tigers are coach killers. Wayne Pearce.
Really are.
Wayne Pearce never coached again after coaching in the NRL. He even coached success in Origin.
Mm-hmm.
Never again after being at the West Tigers. Terry Lamb, never again. Tim Sheens had to leave the fucking country despite winning a few premierships. Had to leave the country after being at the West Tigers to find his next coaching gig. Then you got Mick Potter, become an assistant coach. Jason Taylor. Ivan Cleary was smart enough to leave before he got poisoned with that bullshit. And now we've got Michael Maguire. I mean, who's going to sign him now after what he's been through at the West Tigers?
Yeah, it's going to be tough for him. You know what? His time at the West Tigers, I think he'll get another coaching gig, but the time at the West Tigers will be brushed aside. And I think that, that's the only thing that's going to get him another job. I can't believe that they would look at someone like McNamara. Sean Wayne, there are certain clubs in England that you can go to and you can either find success or you can just be... St. Helens is a really good example. They've had a lot of coaches there that have won a lot of premierships over the last, say, 15 years. And none of them have been elite coaches, really. Maguire was very good at Wigan. You look at Nathan Brown at Huddersfield, and they looked at him as a revolutionary coach in Super League. And in the NRL, he is far from that. If anything, he is one of the lower table coaches. So to look at McNamara and Sean Wayne, I don't rate Sean Wayne at all. And McNamara, I just can't believe anybody would look at his record, look at what he has done with the teams that he's been involved with, and even think of him as a coach. Like, I believe that the Catalan Dragons succeed in spite of him. He is a terrible coach.
Yeah, his game plans are non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the Catalan success is based on the fact that they've basically got the French national team running out there with a few handy English players and Australian players to help steer them around, who know how to run, some pretty standard attacking plays.
Well, you look at, if you just took the better French plays that they get their hands on before other clubs get, and you add James Maloney to it and Sam Tompkins, I mean, just that alone is enough to be a very good Super League club.
Yeah.
And this is a club where, I mean, even Kevin Walters wasn't too bad when he went there, and there were question marks about him as a first grade coach. Now, he's come to the NRL and done pretty well, but he has done a very long apprenticeship as well.
Yes, and he's walked into a very hard job too.
He has, yeah. I think what Kevin Walters has done this season has been remarkable, considering what he had to work with and what he had to fix. The Broncos, I feel, they're not a very good team, but they're at least they're back on track. They're not falling apart like they used to. Steve McNamara's record, I think, speaks for itself. And Sean Wayne, I mean, he hasn't done anything outside of being the Wigan coach. And, if you coach Wigan, St Helens or Leeds, you're going to win a title if you stay there long enough. It doesn't mean you're a good coach. No. Brian McNamara, was that his name?
Steve.
No. Oh, Brian McDermott, maybe?
Brian McDermott.
Brian, the coach.
Yeah.
I've had a few to drink, people. So he's a terrible coach. He was at the London Broncos and drove them into the ground. He was one of the worst things that happened to the London Broncos outside of Tony Ray, who has killed the London Broncos a handful of times. But he went to Leeds and he won titles, and they thought he was a magnificent coach. And of course, he leaves Leeds and does nothing anywhere else. You can't go by Super League records. You just can't.
No, that's right. It's, as you said, you can walk into, I could probably put my 6-year-old daughter in charge of Wigan and they'd win a title.
Yeah, if she stays there long enough, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, remember Brian McLennan, that Kiwi bloke?
Yeah.
Terrible coach. They thought he was a genius over in Super League.
It's pretty easy when you're coaching one of the top 3 teams over there.
Really easy, because you're just outspending everyone else. Yeah. I can't believe that in the hotbed of rugby league in the entire planet, the West Tigers, based at Concord, they are thinking that the best place to find a coach is northern fucking England.
Yep.
A bunch of dickheads.
Summed up perfectly. I keep going back to this article about, and the quotes in it from when Maguire was extended.
Mm-hmm.
He's completely aligned with our passion for the club and is absolutely committed to its long-term and sustained success. Pity that you weren't, Chairman Lee. Michael represents all of the qualities that identify the West Tigers. That is hard work, passion, and insatiable drive to succeed.
No wonder they want to get rid of him.
If those are the qualities that identify the West Tigers, how come we don't have a board that has those qualities?
This is a guy that turned up with the premiership winners ring, right? And he sat down in a demountable and said, yes, I will coach this team.
Let's just add a little bit more emphasis to that premiership ring. He took a club that had no success for 40 years and built them up so that they actually were premiership winners, and they have not been a shit team since.
No, yeah, that's a very good point. And he took that team just as they were coming out of being a really bad, thrown together at the last minute because they had to team, and he turned them into a force, as you say. Still to this day, they've never been really that bad since.
No, I think they've only missed the finals once, and that was not by much.
Mm-hmm.
And they still weren't easy beats that year that they lost.
No.
I think they finished 10th or 11th. Then they come back straight into the finals anyway. You can't knock the credentials of Michael Maguire when he's been able to turn around a club that's had that much value behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So All he needed was a board, much like what he had at South, a board who would back him. The South board proved that if you back a coach and you stick with him, eventually things will turn around and things will come good. And they proved it because they actually stopped going through the cycle of just getting whatever coach was available and they stuck with him. After a while, you get a solid base that players say, you know what, I wouldn't mind going there. And then all of a sudden, they sign Greg Inglis. And things start to improve. And then all of a sudden, you start getting other good players, like top-of-the-line players. They come there and they want to play there because they can see that the club's going somewhere. There's something positive about it. That doesn't happen to the Tigers because every time they have yet another shit season, the people who are in control of a large reason why the club is being shit, then decide to throw the coach under the bus. That creates instability. It makes it hard for an elite player to go, you know what, I want to go to that club because I see what the coach is doing. Because they go, you don't re-sign coaches, you sack them. Michael Maguire was just the second coach in the entire West Tigers history to be offered a contract extension. Tim Sheens was the other one.
Mm.
And even though he signed that contract extension, looks like they're going to sack him before he actually gets into it.
Isn't that what happened with Tim Sheens as well? He didn't get to start his contract extension.
Yeah, it was a bit convoluted with Tim Sheens. There was talk that he'd made a verbal agreement, which is obviously not ironclad, but he gave the board his word at the start of the 2012 season when the Tigers were tipped to be the premiership favourites that year after 2 good seasons prior, that if I don't get the Tigers into the finals this year, I'll step down as coach. And when they finished 10th, he went, I'm not going anywhere. And so the board decided to sack him, even though they still had 2 years on his contract. Might have been 3. Yeah.
Wasn't it Tony Montana that said that I've got 2 things, my word and my balls?
Yeah. Well, in that case, Tim Sheens did not have his word, but he definitely had the West Tigers balls.
He certainly did. You brought up South Sydney. By the way, I think this is episode 347 from memory.
Oh, did we not do the intro?
Nah, fuck the intro. It's our podcast. We can do whatever we want. Russell Crowe basically took over the South Sydney Rabbitohs, and there was a lot of controversy about it because it was a different direction for the club. But he is without doubt the greatest private owner in Australian sports. And the reason is that he stepped back and he put people in place to do the day-to-day work at the club that he knew could do the day-to-day work. But as an owner, he gave them a direction, a clear direction. And even if that clear direction was, look, there's a bunch of brothers over in England that I think we can build around to a certain extent. Or we want Greg Inglis to wear Clive Churchill's number. Or there's an assistant coach down in Melbourne called Michael Maguire who we think can be the guy that builds this club going forward. And he gave them a direction. Every club needs a direction. Penrith needed a direction when Phil Gould come in. Now, you and me, we've talked about what we feel about Phil Gould, but there's no doubt that he come in and he was given the power to give them a direction, and they didn't have that. Sometimes that's what you need as a club, is just a clear pathway to building. I'm not even going to say success. I'm just going to say building something,
Yeah.
And that's not what the West Tigers have. They throw together lineups in November. They sign players that other clubs don't want. They're an absolute mess of an organisation. And everything has changed about that club except really 2 things over the last nearly 10 years. One of them's a halfback. And Brooks, you're only as good as you're going to be. And I think in the right environment, Brooks could have been a much better player. And I think he's been let down by the club. But everyone around him, and mostly the board and the CEO, they've failed. And they should all go. It's definitely not Maguire. You don't win a premiership and set up success like he did at the South Sydney Rabbitohs. To this day, they're in the preliminary final next week, and that's still the DNA of the team he had there. It's not Maguire. It's everyone else. Pascoe needs to go. They need a new board. Their board needs to be open to being voted out by members of the club because it's not good enough. We got a team in Western Sydney that has the second biggest junior base on planet Earth and should be a behemoth. This is a team that's going to have its own friggin' airport. I can't believe that we're in this stage where we've got a team that's called the West Tigers that's trying to build a base at Concord. That's a disgrace.
It is a disgrace. They still don't know, after 20 years, what they're supposed to be. And that's because, for the majority of it, they've spent their time bickering at one another. Oh, we should be down, man. I'll bring back West. Everyone who's pro-Balmain or pro-Magpies should be completely removed from the club. As I said in the last episode, they can have the president of the Balmain Club and the president of the Magpies Club. They can be the only two people involved with those two affiliations on the board. That's it. The rest of the board needs to be made up entirely of West Tigers-focused people with no affiliation to Balmain or the Magpies. None at all. Because West Tigers are their own club now. They're 20 fucking years old. They're almost the same age as the Melbourne Storm.
And they've been around for longer than the Illawarra Steelers were around.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I know you're a Balmain supporter, and you know, we've talked about the Magpies, and look, it took the Magpies close on 20 years to die, basically. And the Balmain Tigers were about to die as well, and they both come together in a last-ditch effort to save some shreds of their history. But the fact of the matter is that the West Tigers have been around for longer than the Illawarra Steelers were an entity in the top grade. There's no going back. You know, they've got an opportunity to be a club that goes from the inner west out to the west and down to the southwest. They have got one of the, if not the best area in all of Sydney to have all to themselves.
Yep.
And they're throwing it away.
They're pissing it up a wall.
They really are.
It's ridiculous. You know, we're seeing how much talent is in the West just by watching Penrith at the moment and the amount of young talent they've got just coming off the production line.
Mm-hmm.
The West Tigers have got, you know, arguably a very similar sized junior base to draw upon, and they're not attracting anything. Yeah, well, the local talent that's out there is largely going to other clubs.
Yeah, and look, if you looked at their possible junior base, say in the next 10 years even, if you looked at it as its own city, it'd be like the fourth biggest city in Australia, easily.
Yes, it's the fastest growing part of Sydney, and it's not even a bloody close contest.
No. And the problem I see is that the Canterbury Bulldogs were looking to go down to Liverpool with their Oasis deal that they had in the early noughties. And so they've always had an eye on that sort of area. And the Panthers aren't just going to sit back forever and watch that area grow. Like, these teams are going to cannibalise one another eventually.
Yeah.
And, you know, the thing that worries me is that the West Tigers, they've got it all at their feet. And I worry that in 15 years from now, we say, well, you know what? Canterbury has their new stadium in Liverpool, and the Panthers took over, you know, a corridor that went right down past the airport in Badgerys Creek and all that. And the West Tigers, who knows where they would be after that? They're
hanging on to about 6 houses in Ann Street or Margaret Street in Brazil.
Yeah, exactly.
That's about it.
Exactly.
Go Balmain.
And look, this is a club that, you know, their two main stadiums. One is a 1960s relic, and I'm being very kind in saying the 60s. And the other one is an early 2000s semi-stadium. And
the 1960s relic, that was actually first used in 1934.
Yeah,
it's almost a century old.
Yeah, and look, they're two of the lowest stadiums in terms of the cost to run teams out of or games out of. That's why the NRL uses them when they have to. The New South Wales Rugby League uses them because of that reason. You know, this is a team that needs an identity and a direction, and under Justin Pascoe, they haven't had that.
Well, he just constantly bangs on about how we're going good financially off the field. What are you regarding as success? Is it the fact that the bank balance is good, or is it what happens on the field? Eventually, one's going to impact the other.
Look, if somebody said to me the Penrith Panthers have been broke the last 2 years, I wouldn't care.
No, the Sharks were largely broke for most of their existence.
Mm-hmm.
They've won more premierships in the last 10 years than the West Tigers, who have been in much better financial position.
And something I've always said is that with a rugby league, an NRL club in particular, the ideal balance sheet is exact. You don't make $1 because that extra dollar that you might have made, put it into junior development. Put it into something where you're building the club. So I don't care if a club says, well, we made $1 million. It's like, well, why didn't you use that $1 million? That's a wasted $1 million.
Exactly
that should
right.
be put into something.
Yep, absolutely. So we'll find out this week if these peanuts decide to get rid of Maguire. I'm sure they will.
Yeah, it feels like they're putting out the information to soften the blow
via their own mouthpiece, James Hood Ornament.
Yeah, and it's very sad. Part of me is sad for Michael Maguire because when you watch that documentary about the West Tigers, you could see the drive he had to make something, and he was pleading with those players, absolutely pleading with them, and trying everything to get something out of them.
He just got crickets in return.
He really did. It was kind of shocking to see, But another part of me is thankful that he doesn't have that burden of that team on him now. That if he goes and he'll go to another club, I think he'll get another deal. I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up being the long-term coach of the Melbourne Storm when Bellamy retires. Huh?
That's definitely a very strong possibility. I also think I wouldn't be surprised if the Knights get a little bit impatient. Mm-hmm. And they look for someone with a bit more drive than their current coach. Someone who doesn't constantly blame himself.
100%. Second Brisbane team as well.
Yeah,
that'd be another one. And you know what? We'll get into it in a second, but depending on what Parramatta are looking at, they might look at him as well.
Well, that's true. I mean, they've got to get to the point now where they go, you know what, we've been a much improved team for the last few years. We need to go and be that next step better. And in order to do that, we do need to find out whether it's a personnel thing or whether it's a coach thing.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if they realise that they might need a new coach because I think Brad Arthur is one of those guys who's he's good at keeping the team focused. He's pretty handy looking after their defence ability. I don't think I've seen Parramatta being as consistently solid in defence as they have been under Brad Arthur these last few years. But the attack is Paul McGregor type limited.
Now, before we get into this Parramatta versus Penrith game, is there anything else you'd like to say about the West Tigers? Because I know as a supporter of the club, and I've supported a club that was poor before, but not like this. Is there anything else you'd like to say about them at this point?
Chairman Lee's not going to get a single fucking cent from me until he fucks off. And not just him, Justin Potato as well. He's got to go as well. And, you know, probably 80% of the board should all just go. Anyone who's been at that club since 2012, 2013, and overseen all of these coaching changes and all of these personnel changes and all of this bullshit that's gone on, and they're still there, you're all losers. Piss off, get some winners in there. That's what needs to happen. Fucking sick of this team being absolute dog shit time and time again. So, you know what? You can sit there and wank on about how great the finances are. Eventually, the fans are going to stop giving it to you. Then what are you going to hang your hat on? Fucking nothing. That's it.
I agree completely.
That's it. I'll think of something else to whinge about something like that. We'll just do another podcast episode about it. But yeah, I've got that much off my chest.
That's what our Tuesday podcast is about.
That's right. We'll fucking get into that when we'll probably have an announcement by then.
Oh no. Oh man. Anyway, so the Panthers versus Parramatta game. Man, this felt like there was a lot on this game. There was more on this game than I realised going into it. And there's a couple of things I'll say. The defence by both teams was heroic. It was It really was unbelievable.
And it was every fucking minute.
Yeah, 80 minutes of it. Yeah,
it was intense. The defence, though, I haven't seen a game that was played so well defensively by both sides for the entire 80 minutes. There was no let up. It was remarkable.
And you were waiting for one of them to crack, and they just didn't.
I was genuinely waiting for Parramatta to crack. I thought on that left edge, I thought they were going to crack out there a few times. No, rock solid the whole time. It's not like Parramatta were giving me signs that they were going to crack. It's just that Penrith on their left side tend to just be so persistent and throw a lot of different things at you over there. Eventually something works and they get through. But they just couldn't.
Even if it's a physical breakdown of we've made so many tackles and they've tried so many times and fatigue gets you, and it didn't happen. It was incredible.
Insane. I've not seen anything like it. Full credit to both sides. It was a phenomenal match. I know Peter V'landys would have fucking hated it because there was only 2 tries scored.
Well, I'm sure that Peter V'landys was watching the game thinking, wow, women are going to be turning off this game.
Yeah,
women like high-scoring games, you know.
Yeah.
The attack of both sides. Penrith's attack, I've said, has not looked great for a few weeks. And the Parramatta attack is kind of what we have come to expect from Parramatta when they take on more the Storm. The Storm they've beaten a couple of times, but it feels like the Panthers really handle them well.
A lot of it just comes down to rushing Moses a bit and coming up on the edges when Brown starts to run, because that's what he likes to do. Is, kind of like Kalen Ponga. You'll tend to see him run towards the corner and try and have a few players on angled runs. So they just rushed up a little bit on that side over there to try and shut down those options from happening. And it just limited his game a little bit. And Moses, when he gets shut down a few times, he just gets kick happy a lot. When he should have just gone, you know what, if you're going to rush up at me, I'm just going to run at you. He's got good footwork at the line. He should have just tried it a few times. Just make the defence bloody think differently. So he let them dictate to him. That was a bit of a problem there. The Parramatta attack can be very one-dimensional, and it has been an issue for quite a while. The Panthers, I don't know what they got to do there. Luai I find he's a problem. I don't know how they fix that in the space of a week when they've got to come up against Melbourne. But to me, I think he's lost all sense of timing. Like, he doesn't know when he should be, the exact precise moment he should be throwing that pass left or when he should be running. He just sort of throws it before the defence has made a decision, and he makes the decision for them. And so they're able to shut down the play straight away, and it just means everything on the left side is just easy to read and easy to shut down. And to the point where Parramatta didn't have to put an extra player out on the left side to defend against him. It was just man on man, which made it harder when they went back inside because it was all man on man the whole way through. There was no overlap anywhere. There was no chances anywhere, and it just makes it a lot harder.
Yeah, and it's weird because there's no questioning his ability. Like,
no, God, no.
Like, his defense, first of all, is fantastic.
Yep.
His ability to run the ball is fantastic. He does have great timing on his passes. He does know when to pick out the right player with the right pass.
Yep.
But I agree with you. It's as though he has so many things running in his mind about what he should do that he's almost holding himself back. And it's really come in since he was asked to take over the playmaking when Cleary went out after Origin because of his AC injury. And I do believe that it is a worry within him that he thinks if he gets tackled with the ball, that's one less playmaker. My personal opinion is I would say to him, forget about everything else, you're a ball runner. And if you run the ball when you've got it, and anything else that comes out of your game is just a bonus for us. Because as a ball runner, he's really dangerous. That's what I would say to him personally. I also think it doesn't help him that Kickout's game has been getting worse probably over the last, I would say, 2 months. We didn't see much of him in this game because he got a bit of an ankle injury, I believe it is. But I think that Kickout's time at the Panthers might be coming to an end. And a lot of it is what we've talked about over recent months where it might be addition by subtraction with Kickout. He's a very good player as an athlete. He's probably in the top 2% of NRL players. But you've got to have that consistency there. And there's just not that consistency out of him. And I think that really puts Luai off as well because when they were at their best, it was Luai was looking to run the ball, but he also had the threat of kick out, and that was holding everyone up, and they were just tearing up the competition. I think that the other thing for the Panthers is that they're terrible out of dummy half at the moment. They were a little bit better on the weekend against Parramatta, but they're just not where they should be for an elite team.
That's true. I wonder if they should, you can't do it now, but if they had done it a few weeks prior, park Kickout on the other side so Cleary could use him.
Well, we've been talking about this since the early rounds of the competition.
Yes.
I think you'd get more out of Kickout at the moment if you played him in the middle of the field.
That's probably true too. Because the problem he gets is the wider he gets, the closer he gets to the Ellis corridor. Mm-hmm. I love the fact we've created that.
Right.
The closer he gets to that, the more he runs towards the sideline. Mm-hmm. And the wider he gets it there, the more he should be trying to run back infield. But because when you get a body that big running towards the corner, your momentum is running in the wrong direction. You're a lot easier to push into touch than a smaller guy.
Yeah, you can be handled.
Yeah.
Even if the defence just holds back and slides, you're already running towards the sideline. You're not running at the try line.
You're doing half the work for him. Well, you can just get Tom Opachik to push you.
Yeah.
Off you go. He's. I think this year he's tried to be a little bit too cute with what he does. Mm-hmm. When he's got to realise that, mate, you're a behemoth. Just try and destroy some people. Mm-hmm. You're a big tank. Frank the Tank, that's you.
Exactly. And I really do. I think maybe move him to the middle of the field. And because I think they would get more out of him in the middle of the field. Now, one of the things I want to say in this game, I want to talk about is the refereeing. Ashley Klein was the referee. And I don't know who the video referee was, but I thought overall the refereeing in this game was very poor. Things were handled poorly for both teams, but I'm definite that the worst of the decisions went against Parramatta. And I felt very sorry for Parramatta in some of the decisions. And there was three that stood out for me. There was one where there was a mistake by Penrith and I didn't even see it on a replay, but they said that there was a late hit off the ball and Penrith retained the ball because of that. I didn't understand that call. And I think some of these late hits off the ball are ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
Second one,
for some of them, you can't even, the player is already committed to the tackle. And sure, it may be a fraction late, but as every good commentator says, where are they supposed to go?
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, too, if I get the ball and I run at the line and I pass it, not watching the line, by the way, but I pass it the last second and I get smashed, that's on me.
Yeah, you deserve that.
Yeah. That's why teams used to play with depth, so that didn't happen.
Exactly right.
Now you get a penalty. The second one was there was a pass from Stone out of dummy half. It was a very poor pass, and they called it a knock on. It was at a crucial stage. I think it went back. I think it clearly went back.
I'll just say this, just sorry to pop in there, but this has been a problem that's been going on for quite a while in the NRL, and that is, as soon as a ball hits the ground, more often than not, they just go, knock on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say at least half the time, that ball has not gone forward. It's been propelled backwards.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did see that one. I thought, that's, not only is that harsh, that's just wrong.
Completely wrong. And they tried to challenge it, and they weren't allowed to challenge it because they said it was a forward pass, and it just wasn't. And that was a really crucial one. The last one was, and this one was disgraceful. The Eels were attacking the line very late in the game. They had 3 tackles up their sleeve, and the play was stopped because the Panthers player had his foot trod on.
Oh, yes, I did see that.
Yeah, now he was in pain. I'm not taking away from that. I don't know if he's got a long-term injury or not, but he was behind the play, and it was just the worst. It was the worst possible time in their whole season to stop the play. It was terrible, and I just, we've got to do something about it, because there was a play earlier in the game, much earlier in the game, where play was stopped because Wonga Blake was leaving the field, but Wonga Blake wasn't on the field. He was actually over the sideline and walking up the sideline he was getting a HIA. And for the Panthers to be able to stop the play, it's just not what rugby league is about. It just isn't. No. If somebody has a spinal injury, stop the play.
Yeah.
Or if they've got a leg that's pointing the wrong way, stop the play.
Yeah. When they're pretty fucking obvious, there's something really bad going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you can get a player, or if a player can get themselves off the field under their own medal, then you don't need to stop the play. If the one trainer can help them get off the field, you don't need to stop the play. If they're down in back play, you don't need to stop the play. And it almost seems, I'm not saying it was the case, but it almost seemed like it was a intentional thing by parents to some extent to try and make the game as stop-start as possible. And in that extent, it did kind of work, but I'm not saying it was. I'm just saying that it just happened so many times against Parramatta. It just comes across that way. But, that's the problem with rules, though, is that clubs will find a way to exploit them, and Penrith were not the first. That's happened several times this year.
Yeah, look, it's happened all year, and it came up once again in that West Tigers documentary where there was a player that was injured, and the rules state you can stop the play if there's a player that needs taken from the field. But we saw behind the scenes, the curtains were pulled back, and Maguire's yelling into the thing, tell them to stop the play. Tell them to stop the play. And that has stuck with me ever since I saw that.
Yep.
And when you see it in a sudden death final match, and it was crucial. And look, if the Panthers could have stopped any set of 6 halfway through in the whole season, it was that set of 6. And it was really costly for the Parramatta Eels. I really do. I felt that the Eels had a lot of really bad decisions go against them. And granted that they found it very difficult to, they didn't really get a chance to look like they were going to score against the Panthers for the last about 60 minutes.
No.
But, when things go against you that were that crucial that many times in a game, I did feel sorry for Parramatta. And one thing that come out of it after the game for me, I didn't feel joyous about it. And James Smith brought it up from the Dead in Goal podcast. He said, are we allowed to enjoy the fact that we won a semi-final. And he said that on Twitter. And I don't know, just within me, it wasn't a game I really enjoyed. And it was a game that I thought that we got away with the win, and I think we were the better team on the night, not by much, and the scoreline shows that. But the thing that come out of it for me is how I felt winning the game was not great. I can't imagine how devastating that loss was for the Parramatta Eels.
Yeah, it's always rough when the game is not decided entirely by the players on the field.
Mm.
And that was generally the case last night. And, I mean, regular listeners of this podcast know that we are not ref bashers.
No.
But at the same time, we're also realists. We know that refs are not always going to have a good game. But last night was far from just your regular poor performance from Klein. It was very bad, to the point where it didn't look like he had much control over what was going on. He was kind of winging it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You almost got the impression that he went out there premeditated to make sure that he didn't pull up play too often if he could help it, for penalties and stuff like that. But incidents on the field forced his hand somewhat. And he was sort of conflicted with a lot of decisions. And when you get like that, you tend to make too many of them wrong. And I think that's kind of the way I was looking at it, is he just looked like he was conflicted within himself over what he should do, because he had a premeditated plan as to how he was going to officiate the game to start with. And then it turned out to be something completely different to what he expected. And he was conflicted the whole way through, and he just kept making just bungle after bungle. It was just horrible to watch. And the fact that the game was still such a fascinating spectacle for the full 80 minutes is a testament to what the players did, in spite of the way he officiated it.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think the fact that there were so many captain's challenges that went against the decisions that were made on field, and you and me completely against the captain's challenges. I would scrap them this week if I could.
This is the dumb thing about it too, is that if you're going to have a captain's challenge system, you bring it in and you'll let the captains use it whenever they need to, or you don't have it at all. The fact that they can only have it for some incidents and not all of them, what's the point?
Yeah, and look, it stops the game dead. We take like 3 or 4 minutes where we're just standing around waiting for somebody in Redfern to make a decision on what happened. And the number one referee in every single NRL game from about, I don't know, it was something like round 8 onwards, stopped being the guy in the middle of the field and started being somebody in a bunker in Redfern.
Yep.
And that was really quiet the way that happened. But you and me picked up on it straight away and we were like, this is wrong. And that's continued throughout the entire season. And I don't know, I just felt there was something about the game. I was happy we won. And it's cool we get to take on the Storm, but there was something about the game that didn't sit right with me. And I think maybe it was the refereeing and the fact that there's all of this garbage that the NRL's added to these games. I'm just not enjoying rugby league at the moment. It's not a good game to watch.
Yeah, it's a horrible product at the moment. It's difficult to enjoy, and to the point now where the game has been so hard to watch for so long this year that I'm struggling to get excited about watching the finals. Yeah. So when an actual genuine contest happens that isn't just one team scoring 50 fucking points, I've already decided in my head, this is going to be just another one of these crap games, so I'm not going to really pay much attention to it. Mm-hmm. You just tune in and look at the score while you're doing something else, and you go, oh, hang on, it's a close game. And by the time you're tuned in, it's too late. You've already missed 3/4 of the match.
Can I ask you your opinion on, like, the Eels' defence was fantastic in this game. I'm not taking away from what they did, but can I ask your opinion as a neutral supporter on the Panthers' defence? Because what I'm seeing personally is absolutely unbelievable and something I don't think I've ever seen before.
We witnessed last night the two best defensive structured outfits playing in the NRL this year. That's my opinion anyway. Penrith have been the best defensive team for the last 2 years, easy.
Yeah.
And as I said, I went on about this last year. Is that everyone talked about how Penrith were always winning and their attack and stuff like that. I went, no one was paying any attention to the fact that their defence was insanely good. They made strong first contact. They wrapped the ball up, and if they didn't, there was always another guy there to help them do that. And as soon as the ball come out, it's all eyes up football. They break out of that tackle and they get back in the line. And so there's no chance for the opposition to quickly try and exploit a gap somewhere. And an opposition attacking unit has to throw every fucking thing they can at them to get through them. And then, in order to get through, you got to have luck. They're just that tough to get through. And it's based on a really solid system, and that is, you work in pairs and you slide, but you don't slide too fast because the attacking team are going to be moving faster. So you want to try and make sure that when you slide, you're covering the inside more than the outside, and you're pushing them towards the sideline because your sideline is a defender you can't beat.
Mm-hmm.
Once you hit the sideline, you're out. So that's what they do. It's not compressed. They just don't slide as fast as a lot of other teams do. You look at, say, the West Tigers when their edge slides. They just sprint. And all your opposition's got to do is just stop or step inside or throw an inside ball and go, oh, look, everyone's gone into row Z. There's this big gap in the middle of the field. You just walk through and score. Penrith don't do that.
Their hesitation and their line is all over the place. And that's the thing about Penrith. Like, you throw a bit of hesitation at this Penrith side and you're looking at a black wall of defence.
That's right. And as I said, that's because they don't slide as fast. So it means if you try an inside play, an inside ball, a step, something like that, you try and do something unique, the defence hasn't overshot the play. They're just half a step behind it, which means they're immediately in place to affect the tackle.
And the thing that I'm really impressed with Ivan Cleary's coaching, and I think that there's definite downsides to his coaching, but one of the things that he's done with this team is that he's got a lot of different players that are very different makeups physically and have different strengths and weaknesses physically. But he has drilled them to a point where you get someone like a Leota next to somebody like an Isaiah Yeo, and you go through their list, like you get a Kickow in there. So many different body shapes, so many different types of player, and he has them just working as one unit, and they never break. And it's incredible to me that we saw a game last night where for 80 minutes, and Parramatta did the same thing mostly. For 80 minutes, Penrith was smashing Parramatta. And you could see early on that the Parramatta Eels were like, we're going to go through the middle of the Panthers. And they kept trying. That's the thing about that game. Like, Parramatta kept trying to go through the middle of the Panthers. And the Panthers were there for 80 whole minutes smashing them.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, I think, for Parramatta, is that they decided to stick with the game plan that worked with Reid Mahoney in the side. Because he's very sharp.
They missed him, didn't they?
Very strong ball runner in the middle. And, they missed him big time because they were not getting that spark and that drive from dummy half through the middle that they got from him. Or the service, for that matter. And that's not to disrespect who Field is. It's just the fact that he is genuinely that much better than most hookers in the game.
Yeah,
he had that much of an impact on that side. You took him out of there, and a lot of their attacking prowess, not just when in point scoring position, just making meters through the middle at the start of a set, that was gone.
Yeah,
so they had to slog, and full credit to them, they did that slog for 80 minutes, and they kept in the game despite that. But when they really needed points and they really needed to, threaten the Panthers line, they just didn't have that creativity out of dummy half that Mahoney brings to the side, and they missed him immensely. I haven't seen a club miss a hooker that much in a long time.
I agree. And, Stone defensively has been outstanding.
Oh, yeah.
But and look, Mahoney in attack, what would he be? He might be like the fourth or fifth best hooker, depending on what day it is, in terms of attacking off the back of a pack like the Eels have. They really, really missed him.
He's one of the best. And that's, I think for me, that was the one deciding factor. Because Coruscant wasn't brilliant. And I think Mahoney at his standard, he gives you a 7 out of 10 just on his standard performance. Mm-hmm. I think it would have been enough to outdo Coruscant. And it might have been enough just to get Parramatta maybe one more try. Or at least get them in a position where they're starting to push Penrith a bit more. And that's generally what they miss. Moses misses him a lot too.
Yeah, definitely. What did you think about the Panthers passing up a couple of really easy penalty kicks? Because I've always felt like if you're in a final, unless you're smashing the opposition team, you take the 2 points. And they will give 2 points twice. So they would have won the game. If they had kicked them both, they would have won the game by 6 points. Now, obviously, things aren't always going to go the same way. But what are your thoughts on you get to give 2 points in the semi-final?
Typically, you take it. But this Panthers side, because it's young, they thrive on positive play. Mm-hmm. And a negative play, like kicking a penalty goal, for a lot of teams, is seen as a negative play. Like, oh, we don't think we're going to be able to score more points, so we have to take whatever we can find.
Yeah.
And so it comes across a bit of a negative thing. So in order to keep themselves positive and playing off the front foot the whole time, they go, you know what, let's keep attacking them and we'll try and crack them. Because, let's be honest, they've been doing that all year.
Yeah.
And it's worked. So why change a winning formula? That's the other thing that comes into it as well. So I think I understood why they went against that.
Mm-hmm.
And to an extent, it probably did help in some extent because it meant they just forced Parramatta to just keep defending sets and sets and sets. And it took so much out of the Eels players when it came to attack. They would just, they're a little bit more gassed. So they couldn't run with the same amount of vigor, and it made them a little bit easy to defend. So it probably had a kick-on effect there. But, yeah, typically I'd just be saying if you get a chance at a penalty goal, I don't care what the situation is in the game, you take the freaking goal.
Yeah, look, I'm sure that they've got statistical people that have sat down and said, like I know in the NFL, they literally have a chart as to when you take a 2-point conversion or when you take, or when you don't, you just take the 1 point after a touchdown. I wonder if we have that in rugby league. I don't think we probably do because there's a lot more uncertainty in the way that the kicks will go.
Hang on. Got some breaking news for you, mate. Some breaking news.
What is it, Andrew?
It's there's talk that Manly might be about to sign a former Kangaroos Test superstar.
Wow, who is it?
Aaron Woods.
Ah, well, he's the softest cunt in the NRL.
Everyone needs some pillows around.
It'll be good. He can make 250 metres from kickoffs.
That's right. He's going to be just powerful. I dare say Des is getting him because of his magnificent ability to get the ball on a crash play and instead of actually running to the line, just ditching it to the next person next to him. He loves that.
Yeah. On top of that, you'll be able to watch Manly games and see Andrew Johns sexualise him.
Who doesn't like that? That beats watching Matty Johns watching himself and doing the same thing.
Oh, that's hilarious.
The other news too is Ash Taylor could be going to the Warriors.
That's a rough one. Like you and me said, that there'll be a team that will get desperate and that will sign him. I don't know about you, but I reckon that there are at least 10 teams that would take Harris Tavita as their halfback tomorrow.
I would.
Yeah. Look, if he signed for Penrith, and we've got two halves, we're good for halves. But if he signed for Penrith, I would be over the moon.
If he signed for Penrith, I'd be going, see, Jerome, it was nice having you, mate. Hope you have a good career. On your bike, fella.
He's a fantastic player. I've always been pretty big on him. I think that it's a travesty that the Warriors haven't just given him the keys. I think Nathan Brown has given him the keys to a certain extent, but I can't believe that they would even think of Ash Taylor. I think that there are teams in the competition that could maybe use Ash Taylor, and forget how much he was on at the Titans. But I think there are teams that could use a player of his not first grade quality caliber, but the Warriors are not one of them.
I don't see him as NRL quality.
No,
I don't think I ever have. There's no. If someone said to me, I give you the task of putting together a 5-minute highlights package of Ash Taylor, I would be making sure I've got that thing slowed down as much as possible. And it might just be him doing a sidestep.
It's just
slowing it down so you see it over just one sidestep over 5 minutes. There's so little to choose from for me. I don't see the value in him even at 150, 200 grand a year. There's nothing in it for me. He's got a non-existent kicking game as far as attacking ability. Mm-hmm. There's not much thought to his game in attack. It's usually just plays what he thinks is right, and half the time it's wrong. Very, very wrong. His hands can often just abandon him. Sometimes he comes out there and instead of having hands, it's like he's just attached a couple of mop heads to the ends of his arms. So what the hell is this? You're just dropping the ball with no one around you? What the fuck is going on? At the same time, he's become a dad, so apparently that means something.
Yeah, does becoming a dad obviously changes you, but did it make you a better footballer?
Me personally?
Mm-hmm.
Immensely better. Immensely better. My problem was age.
You were just past the age of being a first grader, huh?
Yeah, I wasn't 30 anymore.
Damn it.
That was the problem.
You'd qualify for a Super League career.
I've still got my manager in that area, in that realm. COVID's impacted me a bit because I don't want to travel to England while there's COVID going on.
Yeah. I see that issue with travelling to England before COVID. Who wants to go to fucking England?
I don't want a bit of gravy on chips every now and then. Not every day, but every now and then.
How good is fish and chips in England, though, hey?
I'll say this, and I'll say this in all sincerity. The Magpie Cafe in Whitby,
mm-hmm.
the best fish and chips, bar none, worldwide.
I've had fish and chips in Whitby. I don't know where it was that I got it, but it was good. I got fish and chips all over the UK. I must have spent, when you take into account the exchange rates at the time in 2006, I'm willing to say I probably spent close to $500 on fish and chips.
That's a solid amount.
Yeah.
I didn't go that far, but that place you went to Whitby, was it near the bridge that goes across?
Oh, I can't remember at all. But I got fish and chips at a place in Hull. I don't think it's there anymore.
Wound up by the health department.
I don't know. It was. I tell people that are listening. It was on the little main street that went up from Zoology, which was a pub on the corner, which I got kicked out of once. And
I'm not surprised given the amount of talk you do about eating animals. I'm sure you offended someone.
No, I remember the day I went into it and I decided I was going to write myself off. And it was the day of it was one of the big soccer, it might have been the European Champions League semi-final, and I think it was Manchester United versus Celtic or something. And I just started drinking pints of beer like I don't even remember how many I got to, but I remember them coming up to me and saying, "We're going to have to ask you to leave." And I said, "Give me 3 minutes and I will leave."
Did
And
they
that
give
was
you 3
good. I
minutes?
gave them 3 minutes.
Oh, there you go. That was nice of them.
Yeah.
I was wondering if they wanted you to leave because your bar fridge was taking up too much space because you would have needed that to keep cooling the beer down.
I did have a warm beer in Hull. I think it was a John Smith's from memory.
How was it?
It was kind of shocking. I was like, oh, there's that warm beer that the Poms like. It was weird.
Oh dear. That's good times. Good times.
It was good times. Man, I tell you what, I left that pub. I went and I got a hamburger with the lot, and there was a second hamburger I liked to get. I can't remember what it was, and I took them back to my hotel, started scoffing them down, and then fucking puked everywhere.
That's a ticket.
It was good fun. And then I got fish and chips the next day.
Getting fish and chips in England is the easiest thing to do.
It really is. That was the place where I had fried spam the first time.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Not interested in that one.
Have you never had it?
Don't care for it.
I tell you what, not bad.
Yep, take your word for it.
Yeah.
Did I have it with mushy peas?
I tell you what, I used to get a full fish, which was like about a foot and a bit long, right? I used to get that, and I used to either get curry or mushy peas, and I'd get an extra thing. That was when I used to be able to eat like a horse, and it didn't matter.
Was the extra thing sick?
It was what you call heart disease.
Oh yeah, right. That's not surprising whatsoever.
Yeah.
What a fascinating trip down England's memory lane that we had just there.
Wonderful.
What else has been going on in the world of rugby league?
Not much else really that I can think of. Can you think of anything else that's been going on in rugby league that has come up? I know that the NRL is looking at sanctioning the Penrith trainer that called stop to the play while Penrith was defending their line and Parramatta had 3 sets of tackles, which to me is like, what are you going to do? Like, that doesn't do anything for Parramatta.
Can I say it? Can I say it?
Yeah.
Bit fucking late now.
Yeah, exactly.
That horse is bolted. It's done 15 laps. It's gone.
Yeah, it's gone. You know, we haven't talked about it with the Parramatta Eels yet. Considering the way that their season went, and I mean, is Brad Arthur's job on the line still?
Look, you'd think it wasn't because they're still a top, essentially a top 5, top 6 team in the NRL, and it's pretty, they're a good distance ahead of the next 10 teams. So you'd think that on that alone, he's going to be safe. But I would suggest that if Parramatta genuinely want to try and capitalise on this window they're in at the moment, because I still think they're in their premiership window, they do need another coach, a better coach. I think Brad Arthur has taken on as far as he is competently capable of doing. And I think he's done a lot better than I ever thought he would do. I didn't rate him as a coach initially, and he struggled for quite a while with that Parramatta side. There's obviously a lot of factors involved as to why he was struggling there, but if you're listening, West Tigers, Parramatta stuck with him. Look what happened. Isn't it amazing how that happens? So yeah, I guess it's trying to figure out whether they can bring in other assistants to help him make up those extra few percentage points to take him from being a top 6 team to a top 2 team or a premiership team, or whether they just need a new coach. But I think that's all they need to sort of focus on. And whoever they bring in, being another assistant or a head coach, they need to work on getting Moses to run again.
Yeah.
Is we all remember what he was doing at the start of last year when he was running the ball. He was destroying teams single-handedly, and that's what he does with his running game when it's on song. And for too much of the last 18 months, it's just been him kicking the corners. And it's just, you need more than that from your halfback.
I think if I was Parramatta, I definitely think that there's a time where a coach has done everything he can. And I think Brad Arthur is probably at that point now. And I would sit down with the rest of the board and say, Wayne Bennett's available. We've got the money because Parramatta's a pretty wealthy club. And we'd be stupid to not make Wayne Bennett a Godfather offer. And even if it was just for 2 years, because I feel like Wayne Bennett wouldn't want too long of a deal, but I think that it would be, Parramatta is a team that doesn't need much more. And I think Wayne Bennett, even if you got him for 2 years, I think he could do something for you. At the very least, he would tell you whether you've got the ability with this playing staff to go that extra step.
So would you get Bennett as being head coach, or would you get him in as a coaching director?
I'd 100% get him as head coach. I don't believe in coaching directors, hey?
Yeah, it's just something that's come up that what Phil Gould did. That's pretty much it.
Mm.
Yeah,
you look at that Penrith situation. If you say that Phil Gould was the general manager and he got rid of Ivan Cleary the first time around, brought in Griffin, got rid of Griffin when they're in fourth spot, brought back Cleary eventually, and then they moved Gould on. And Gould was like, well, this is the natural progression of the Panthers, and everyone that was there at the club was that they wouldn't need him anymore, and he was right in that sense. But I would also suggest that Ivan Cleary was saying to people, I'm not doing this with Gould over me again. I'm not having him with the axe waiting, because the fact of the matter is that first grade coaches are weird people, and they all believe that they know how to win a premiership. That's why they're first grade coaches. And to have one of those people above you every time you don't win a grand final, they're all thinking, well, I would have won it.
That's right, yeah.
So, yeah, I don't believe in coaching directors.
No, I've never been really sold on them myself. I just think, all coaches, if they're going to be any good, they've got to have some element of ego about them.
Mm.
And you can't have two egos trying to run a team.
No.
We kind of saw a bit of that bickering sort of stuff going on at Penrith when Ivan Cleary went over there with Gus still around.
Yeah. And
it's just there's just that sense that the things weren't seated well.
True. And I think that from a player's point of view, in rugby league anyway, the boss is the coach. And I don't even think the boss really is the chairman or the owner or anyone like that, because they're a little bit separated from the day-to-day running of the club and the team.
At a proper club, yes.
Yes. And so, I think the boss has got to be one person, and it has to be the coach. And I think that the Melbourne Storm is the best example of that.
Yeah, I fully agree. That's what's going to be interesting about getting Tim Sheens in at the West Tigers.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, because if Sheens would, to make the job work in that sense, I feel as though he would have to be a step away from the first grade side and just be involved in the juniors. Like, if I saw Sheens involved in the first grade side too much, that would be a real worry to me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Who do you reckon will be if they get rid of Maguire, who do you reckon it would be that would take over?
It's going to be someone, because, they typically tend to go with 2 or 3 But at least one really bad coach after they've had a decent one. So after Wayne Pearce, they had Terry Lamb, and they had Tim Sheens, and after that they had Mick Potter, Jason Taylor. Then Ivan Cleary and Michael Maguire. So they actually had two good coaches in a row there, which is very rare. So they're probably due to really, really bad ones now. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's Sean Wayne comes in, followed by maybe Wally Lewis.
Imagine that. That'd be great.
Then I would look, maybe not Wally Lewis. That's probably being a bit facetious. Let's go with, say, Brad Fittler.
Oh, Brad Fittler.
They might bark up that tree.
Brad Fittler would be too bad, I don't think, actually.
Yeah.
You're not a fan.
I don't think if Brad Fittler was able to take the team and just say, look, we're just going to walk on Leichhardt Oval barefoot, just, feel the spirit of the ground coming through your soul. That's what you're playing for this weekend. I don't think it's going to work.
Don't you feel like Brad Fittler also has enough people around him that would say, Brad, no?
Probably not.
Oh, really?
No, because at the Tigers, I think he'd probably get paid more to coach at the Tigers than he would for New South Wales. I think they'd say, Brad, we noticed the Tigers aren't winning. Have you considered talking to, the coach whisperer? And Brad would go, that's a fucking great idea.
The coach whisperer.
So why are we all whispering? Because that's what the coach whisperer does. It'll work. That's what he'll do. All right, we're going to do whispering and shoes off on Leichhardt Oval, and this is going to make us win. And they'll lose like 15 games in a row, and then they'll win a game. And you go, I told you. It was just around the corner. I knew it was coming. Job done. And the West Tigers will go, we found our spiritual team and our spiritual leader. Let's sign this bloke up for another 15 years. And that's what they'll do.
Do you reckon that within the next, let's say 8 years, somebody at the West Tigers, and I love this man, he's a soulmate of mine, he doesn't even know it, but do you reckon somebody at the West Tigers sits down and says to Benji Marshall, Benji, we need somebody that knows rugby league to coach this team, and Benji just sort of falls into the job a little bit?
I don't know if Benji would be a head coach. Mm-hmm. I think he'd be someone like Farah would be an assistant coach. I don't even think Farah would actually make that bad of head coach. Mm-hmm. Seen him on the documentary, he gets the small things that need to be done on the field that most people take for granted. Farah understands all those little things. I think it just comes from, being at 9, being at the front the whole time, and all the plays start with you, and, you understand defense as well. So I think Farah would probably make a pretty good assistant coach. I don't know how much actual training he's had in that area yet. I'm not sure it's much, but I think if you got him some decent coaching in that area, I think he'd be a very handy assistant coach. Benji, though, I'm not too sure, because he was not a structured player. And I think the people who make the best coaches are structured players. That's why Wally Lewis was not a good coach. He was just off the cuff.
And the truly great players, too, I think that they struggle because they know that in situations their greatness shone. Their ability to perform above and beyond everyone else, that was the reason they were so great. And so there's a certain point where they just miss that ability from their team to be great like they were. Like Wally Lewis is a great example of it. Wally Lewis could single-handedly win a game with the worst team over any opponent. Didn't matter who it was. You can't draw that out of a team.
No, I think we see that a bit with Ricky Stuart.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Ricky Stuart was as much of a, play what you see sort of player. I think there was a little bit of structure about him.
Yeah.
But I think Stuart's skill set was so insanely good. I don't think a lot of people recognise how great a halfback he was in every aspect of the game. I think a lot of it gets forgotten because he's become a coach. People just see him as a coach now. But if you ever get a chance, watch some Ricky Stuart matches, highlights, whatever you like. Had one of the greatest dummies any player's ever had. His kicking game, my fucking God, that thing was just... I swear he has, of all the players that have played the game, he had pretty much close to the most perfect kicking game a player could have.
Mm-hmm.
Long passing game. Him and Johns are almost equal for the long passing game. John's a much better defender. Ricky wasn't bad. And Johns, I think, was a better support player. Mind you, when you're Ricky Stuart and you've got a heap of, superstars around you, what the fuck are you doing being a support player? You just pass that shit out there and let the magic take over. But I don't think there's a great deal of gap between Andrew Johns and Ricky Stuart as players.
Yeah, I would say that in terms of kicking game, like Johns is really the only one I can think of that is at that sort of level. I think Johns, like the thing to remember is Ricky Stuart was kind of like the first person to have a kicking game of that level. And Johns added his nuance to Ricky Stuart's kicking game that he'd seen.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to, like that, it means so much to be the first to have a kicking game at that level. And look, if you took Ricky Stuart and brought him into today's game, he has the best kicking game in the competition today.
Easy.
Like that's what his level was. He changed games with his kicking game. And I agree with you. I think that the big difference was probably defence. And whenever you had Ricky Stuart in your side, you never worried about him defensively. But the thing with Johns was that he was so strong and robust as a player that he could properly hit you hard.
Yeah. And like even Ricky Stuart always needed to have a really good defender next to him just in case he needed that help. Joey just didn't. And so that made it so much easier to have a defensive line set when you know your 7 doesn't need protecting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that changes a lot of things in a team. That's the large reason why Joey is better than Ricky, but as I said, I don't think there's a great deal in him.
I also would say that, like, because of John's early career at rep level where he was played at hooker, I think that helped him really hone his ability to know when to run the ball as a halfback. And I think it helped his defence as well.
It helped his defensive, especially the technique that he used to tackle.
100%. And the thing that, because Ricky Stuart played in that great Canberra team and even New South Wales to a certain extent, the players that he was working with, I think, were in some sense better than Andrew Johns. So he would put the players on and the players around Ricky Stuart would kind of finish it all off. Whereas there were times where Johns had to be the one that really would break the line with his running game or finish the play off with backing up, So It's interesting. But yeah, like if you dropped Ricky Stuart as he's peak into today's game, and I'm a huge fan of Cleary, who I think is the best halfback in the game. Ricky Stuart's the best halfback in the game today, and it's not even close.
Stuart's phenomenal.
Yeah.
A lot of people love watching the Raiders play because of, either Mal or Mullins or, you name it, any sort of player in there. I watched Canberra just for Ricky Stuart because the way he controlled a game, the way he could turn it, just with a kick. His passing, he was one of the first to do, the occasional trick pass here and there, the odd no-look pass, things like that. But his long ball, my God. He's cut out past his long ball. He was doing flat passes before anyone knew what the hell they were.
Yeah, it was him, and then the Johns brothers sort of come along off the back of him.
Yeah, Johns and Brett Kamali as well. Those it was all happening at the same time. But yeah, it's definitely John. As you said, Johns did take Stewart's game to the next level. But yeah, that's pretty much that there, I think. Yeah, and I suppose we're going back to coaches, and that's why people like sort of unknown players become really good coaches, I think.
Yeah, and I think that it's a lot of the times it's fringe first graders who I think whether they have studied the game to try and get into the top 13 or even into the top 17, that, and it's a certain sort of personality as well. I think that's a massive part of it, that you look at all of the first grade coaches and they're kind of weird people. And I don't think that that's a mistake.
No.
We've joked on this podcast that you don't want to be caught at a party talking to a first grade coach because they'll bore the fucking tears out of your eyes, And I think
although let's be honest, I'm a historian. I can probably relate.
You'd love it.
I was sitting there going, "Oh, really? Tell me more about block play A."
How far do you reckon you'd have to go back before? Because there's obviously different levels of coaching, and I think that Jack Gibson was a turning point in coaching, probably. And I feel like maybe before him, you would get the people in that were coaches that were actually pretty fun to be around, or not fun, but just interesting people.
Yeah, I think. I know when the game first began, teams didn't actually have like genuine coaches. It was the captain's job to run training drills and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't start seeing actual coaches become a regular thing until probably mid-20s. And even then, that wasn't all clubs and it wasn't consistent. You didn't start getting that generally across all clubs until after World War II, when having an actual coach was the done thing to do. Yeah, I mean, there's some coaches you just have to look at and go, you know what, they generally had something about them that made the players better. And I think the two from the past that stand out for me are Duncan Thompson and Arthur Halloway. And Arthur Halloway is the first, and I'm going to say this, only super coach, because he's won more premierships as a coach than any other coach has. So why is he not super coach?
Yeah.
And he did it across several generations, some as captain coach, some as a coach, and he did it with different clubs. What more is he going to do?
Yeah.
So yeah, he's the pinnacle. I don't see anyone's going to top him. And to have done it as I think most of his coaching was done in the space of about a 30-year period. As a player in the just after and during World War One, leading up to the tail end of World War Two, that was the period he coached. As I said, the first 4 years of it was as a player coach, and then just in and out of clubs after that, and creating dynasties that insane, like the Balmain dynasty from 1915 to 1920. That was him.
Mm-hmm.
That East side with Dave Brown at 30, 34, 35 through to 37, 38. Guess who was coach there again? And he went and coached North and helped get them back into finals football. And then he went back to East and won another premiership with them in the late 40s. Phenomenal. Duncan Thompson was doing similar. Like he saw during games when he was the Australian Test selector. He saw in one Test match at halftime, he went up to Keith Holman and says, "Mate, that it's English defenders. They're waiting for you to do something, and you're doing it before, they have to decide what to do. Run the ball." And sure enough, second half, Holman runs the ball nearly every single time, gets man of the match, Australia wins the Test.
Mm-hmm.
Just he's eye for detail, and his fact that he could pinpoint what each player should do and when they should do it, even when he's talking to the absolute greats of the game. He can make them that 1% better. That's what a great coach does. And I mean, he's the bloke who helped teach Wayne Bennett do what he does.
Yeah.
And so those two for me, those are your super coaches. Everyone else branches out from there. And I'm not taking anything away from Jack Gibson. What he did as well is pretty phenomenal. And he doesn't come from either of those two. So he's done his own thing from his own experiences and stuff like that. So he rightly deserves that title. But I'm less inclined to give any modern coaches that title at this stage.
I get that. You know, the one coach that I find really interesting is Clive Churchill, because coming from being a great player, I consider him the greatest player of all time, to go into the weird thing about Churchill is he went into coaching and was successful as well, and then went into administration and was successful. Like, he was just, everything he did was a success.
Yeah.
And it's the fact, and we talked about it before, that a great player going into coaching rarely is a great coach, and he was able to get results.
Yeah, he bucked that trend.
Yeah, I just find that phenomenal. And then he went into administration and was good at it. It's, you know, and that to me is part of the overall thing of Clive Churchill's. He was just a great person, and everything you read about him is just phenomenal. Everybody talks about him with reverence, and he's the only other one that really stands out to me as maybe having something extra. Because I agree with you, a great coach, like you and me have watched the game all our lives. A really good coach would see things that you and me just don't even recognize, you know?
Yeah.
And to be able to see the game on that level is something that's really interesting. And I think that, you know, you look at today's coaches, I think Bennett has something that you can't put your finger on, but he gets something out of his teams, you know? And Craig Bellamy, like, if you go by record, he's the greatest coach of all time. And it's incredible what a really good coach can do and what a big difference they can make to a side.
Absolutely. And as I said before, like, a great coach can make great players better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that I think separates a lot of coaches. Not many coaches can do that with great players. A lot of times they just let the great player do their thing and just get a bunch of support staff around them, so to speak.
I guess that's one of the interesting things about Mal Meninga at rep level, is that as a club coach, he wasn't that great. He was probably middle of the pack, you know, overall. But at Queensland level, and look, he had one of the all-time greatest teams ever that was assembled. He did it. But even at Australian level, he has something at that representative level that just works. And I don't know whether it is that you cannot question that he has done everything at rep level. Like, it doesn't matter what player you are. If you're Darren Lockyer and you walk into a team that Mal Meninga's coaching, Mal Meninga's done it, you know. So whether the rep players look up to Meninga and trust him and trust everything he says, or whether Mal Meninga just knows what you need to do to win a rep game and come together in the space of 10 days. He has something at rep level that he didn't have at club level, which is really interesting.
No, I agree. It's it's a fascinating topic too, talk about coaches and what makes who better than others.
Mm.
You're going for a while with that one.
Yeah.
But that's that could be a chat for another day. Wouldn't it be good to get an actual coach in one day? I mean, Michael Maguire might be free soon, so we could probably get him, I guess.
Yeah, we'll give him 3 days, hey?
Yeah. And then, the Tigers go and hire another coach. How long do you reckon it'd take me to be able to start bitching about him again? Are the poor followers of this podcast are they going to start having withdrawal symptoms?
I give it 4 days, hey?
Yeah, probably 4 days.
It's going to be interesting. If I had to put money on it, I'm saying Paul Green.
Oh, fuck.
I just have a feeling when he stepped down from that Queensland role, and whether he really stepped down or they kind of moved him on because they wanted something different, I just had a feeling about it.
The fact that they moved him on with no replacement in mind is the thing that makes me think he had a gig somewhere else to go to straight away, and it was urgent that he took it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been worrying that the Tigers have signed him all along, and they're going to go, "Oh, he's a premiership winner." I'm going, "Yeah, well, so is a dickhead. You just, fucking hell."
So's Michael Hagan.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry you've got to go through this as a fan. I know it sucks.
The thing is, this is all I know as a fan.
Yeah, that's weird.
Like the last time I followed my team, knowing that they were a successful team and they were a genuine threat to the premiership, I was 9 years old.
Oh, that's a rough one. And even then, like...
Oh, they were genuine competition heavyweight then. And the following year, they were still one of the best sides.
I don't think people would, if you explained how big the Balmain Tigers were, people would not think you were telling the truth. They were a juggernaut.
Yeah. The crazy thing about the Balmain side in the 80s is that team is probably goes down as one of the greatest, not just Balmain sides, but one of the greatest squads assembled over a 6 to 8 year period. And yet, out of all of the teams that have done that, have been as good as that as far as, names on paper and what they've achieved while they're at the club, they're the only one that didn't win a premiership.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's crazy.
It really is. They run into some bloody good teams, though, like...
Oh, yeah, but I mean, you look at this, and this is the year before the Salary Cup came in, but you look at who Balmain had in that side. You got Tim Brasher 3 or 4 years before he became a test player. David Brooks, who was a Origin representative. Andy Courier, who somehow played test football for England in that period.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand if Andy Courier came along today that he'd have 40 fucking tests for England. But back then, how?
Yeah.
Sean Edwards, one of the better halves that England had in the 80s and 90s.
I think he won like 21 different trophies in England.
Insane. You got Ben Elias, who's a current test player, Gary Freeman, a test player, Russell Gardner, who'd played test and Origin players as well, James Grant, who'd actually played for the Wallabies before he came across to the Tigers, Gary Jack, the world's best player just the year before, Bruce Maguire, a test player and an Origin player, Wayne Pearce, test Origin player, Steve Roach, same, Paul Sirenen, same. That's a fucking stunning squad to have around. And that's most of your forward pack and your halves and your spine.
Yeah.
All set. World-class players, test players. That's what they had. There was very few teams that were better than them. And that's just the 89 squad. Some of the ones before it in 86, 87, they had Gary Schofield at his absolute peak. 88, they had Ellery Hanley at his absolute peak. It's just insane what they had.
And the way that by 94, they were pretty much done. Like
not 94, mate. 91. That's 2 years after this. Alan Jones come in, and half these players all just fucked off.
Yeah.
People think they just retired because they were old. Benny Elias was 27. Ciro was 26. Blocker was 29. These both weren't even 30. Wayne Pearce was 31. He retired the year before. They weren't old.
Mm.
They just knew that Alan Jones was fucking shit.
It's so weird how, like, if you'd gone to somebody in 1989, said in 5 years' time, it's not just all over. The club is struggling to survive. They would not have believed it. Like, I still remember footage of Balmain Leagues Club where it like, to me, if somebody says a packed Leagues Club for grand final day, that's the image I have in my head. Yeah. It's not even Panthers Leagues Club.
The big Balmain logo on the carpet. Yeah,
it's so weird how sport can be sometimes like that, where, and it's, I know it's more than a window because they've got a very long history, but there's this window of, like, they're right there to win a title and it doesn't quite work out for them. And then 5 years later, it's literally like, oh no, we're struggling here. It's very strange.
Yeah, how quickly it turns.
Yeah, and it'd be like the Panthers now in 5 years' time. They're stuffed.
Well, like they've become the Bulldogs now.
Yeah.
It's insane how quickly it can drop off. I mean, that is 5 years after the Tigers made that last grand final in '89 that they finished with a wooden spoon.
Mm.
And it's only 5 years after they got the wooden spoon that they had to merge.
Yeah, and it was like the merger was weird. Maybe we should do a whole episode on the merger because
We could do that.
yeah, it was like it was almost an afterthought merger, wasn't it? It was like
Yeah, it was done by both clubs to try and protect themselves because they knew that all the other options around them was essentially takeover bids.
Yeah, and like for both teams, it was over. Like there wasn't a question of you'll survive going forward if you're lucky. It was done.
Yeah, Balmain were told, from memory, were told that you have a short existence.
Mm.
We suggest you might only have about 5 or 6 more years left as a sole entity, and you'll have to merge anyway. And they knew that if they waited that period of time, they would be in such a poorer position going forward that they would only have to accept the takeover bid. So they had to take the merger then, so that they could still have some form of identity, moving forward. That's gone down well.
Yeah. At least they went from strength to strength. I've been thinking a lot lately about the North Sydney sides of the late 90s because a lot of people that listen to us probably don't realise what a stable part of the competition they were at the top of the ladder and how they were always one of the teams you had to get past. They might not have been premiership favourites, but they were a team you had to beat in the finals pretty much year on year.
Always had a bloody tough and talented forward pack.
Yeah. It was like them and Newcastle always had good forward packs.
Yeah.
And like in the space of about 3 years, it just went to nothing.
Yeah, those last 3 years, as we've jokingly said before, and not jokingly making fun of, being wrong. It's legitimate, but it rained.
Yeah. It rained in Gosford and it delayed the building of that stadium.
I doubt that there's too many teams at a professional level anywhere in the world that had to fold or merge because of rain.
Ooh, that's a good question. I can't think of any that were that badly affected by the weather. But yeah, I know for the Panthers, there was one of the Panthers CEOs, and this is going back maybe 12, 15 years ago or something, and he said that the reason that the Panthers still were around was because it rained in Gosford. And like, it really was. It was that close.
Yeah, Penrith were. I mean, that's the thing, though. I mean, that Super League war, which we've gone through, I mean, that was making mincemeat of a lot of clubs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, again, that's another chat for another episode.
Yeah, we've just talked about 15 different episodes we could do, eh?
Well, yeah, we're just fleshing a few ideas out.
We're not giving it to you now.
No, we're just dick teasing everyone.
Yeah, pretty much.
We'll get round to all of this one day.
Yeah,
trust us.
We've got a whole off season. I reckon I've still got in about a week from now. I'll be crying about the Panthers getting smashed by the Storm. So, and after that, we got a whole off season.
Yeah, I mean, I've got pretty much an episode every week of abusing the West Tigers board members until they quit. I mean, they're not quitting for the next 10 years, so you know what we're doing every week for the next 10 years.
That'll be great.
Yeah, that won't get repetitious at all. But it's
shit.
good because most of our listeners are probably Parramatta or Penrith fans, and they like nothing more than West Tigers sooks. At least I'm not sooking about other clubs. I'm just sooking about my own club, about how shit it is. So I think they find that a little bit cathartic because they don't have to worry about theirs being crap because they go, oh, poor Fergo, his team's worse.
But how weird is it that we started a podcast, right? And a lot of the talk, like when we started the podcast, I wasn't thinking about Penrith being good. And, You know, there's been so much weird shit that's gone on at the West Tigers. It's just been a matter, like if you sat down and said, okay, let's not make it about our two clubs. If we didn't talk about our two clubs, we'd be missing giant chunks of what's going on in rugby league.
We would, plus we'd have about 280 episodes less.
Yeah, bro. Oh, shit.
People would be able to listen to our entire history of podcasts in, the time it takes them to, I don't know, make toast.
Well, I tell you what, if we had started the podcast during the Matthew Elliott era, oh my God.
Yeah, I reckon we need to do a history episode on that.
We probably should, hey.
Yeah.
We should go through one year after another year. And the funny thing is, the year I'll be angriest is when he took us to second place on the ladder. Because I knew that was like, fuck, this guy's going to be here for longer.
As soon as he does that, here comes a contract extension.
I was so angry.
Because it's a weird thing. You don't want to see your team lose, but sometimes you know that your team losing could be the best thing about getting rid of a whole heap of things that are bad at the club.
Yeah, 100%.
So you're willing to take a bad year if it means that you get a whole heap of improvements out of it. That doesn't happen at the West Tigers. We just get lots of bad years and no improvements.
And I get it. The year that we re-signed Matt Adamson, if we had a podcast going then, I would have been sued. Personally.
Well, we can go back in time.
No. Oh, shit.
We could dredge this up. But we can make it fair. We can go back to when Alan Jones was coach at Balmain.
Yeah. I know there's been a couple of episodes we've brought that up, and you've said some shit, and I've been like, whew.
I hope he's not listening.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
Oh, boy. Oh, look, we should probably wrap this one up, I reckon.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for tuning in, people. Hope you enjoyed the intro. That's always good when we just throw a bit of a curveball at you.
Yeah, we get 15 minutes into it and then we tell you what number it is.
Just because we like doing shit differently.
Yeah. So,
you know what I was thinking?
Mm-hmm.
I could just drop the intro now at the end.
Yeah, do it. Why not?
Who else does that?
Yeah.
All right, well, welcome to episode 346 of Fergo and the Freak.
I think it's 7, isn't it? I think
347. Let's do that as well. It's episode 347 of Fergo and the Freak. I'm that bloke from Rugby League Project, Andrew Ferguson. You can find me on Twitter at AndrewRLP. And joining me in this episode was the glorious League Freak. You can also find on Twitter at League Freak. What can we tell them, mate?
I had a good one. It was good.
It was good. It was good. You can find us on all the socials, Instagram, Twitter, at Fergo Freak Pod. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, MySpace. Let us know if you think we should be on any other social media platforms.
Tumblr.
Tumblr, just for shits and giggles even. And we'll just get Nadine to run it.
Yeah, Nadine basically runs 75% of what we do. We just do the podcasts.
That's pretty much it. She runs everything else. Finance, catering.
She makes
legal.
I'm pretty sure she's got like a donut maker or something. I've got to order like $1,000 worth of donuts because I'm a pig.
That happens.
Yeah.
And it's lockdown, you've got to treat yourself.
Let me tell you, the double is at KFC, right? I found out 5 days ago, 4 days in a row I've had 2 doubles.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'm not even joking, eh?
You might need to start getting into a few salads soon.
I plan on having a heart attack before then. Oh, shit.
If we time it right, you'll do it in the episode. That'll be good.
Yeah, it would be pretty handy just to have a heart attack while we're recording.
You all right? It's happening. It's happening.
Just got to chew through this. Anyway, I've had too much to drink tonight.
No such thing. Yeah, check us out. Make sure you give us a 5-star rating and give us a review on your podcast listening app. That'd be fantastic. And yeah, we'll wrap it up. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Catch you all next time.